Olivia Wilson adjusted her glasses as she stared at the complex algebra equation on the whiteboard. The fluorescent lights hummed above, casting harsh shadows across the faces of her classmates already slumped in their seats. She was 10 minutes early as always, but the look she received made her feel like she'd arrived uninvited to a private party. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Great, the math nerd's here, muttered Tyler Jenkins under his breath, not quite low enough for Olivia to miss. A few chuckles rippled through the room. Olivia had been a top student at Westridge High School for the past 3 years, consistently maintaining a perfect 4.0 GPA across all subjects. She'd never received anything lower than an A once, not by choice, but by necessity. Growing up in a modest home in Springfield, Missouri, Olivia had dreams of attending an Ivy League university. Her parents, both hardworking public school teachers, couldn't afford to pay for her education without substantial scholarships. Every grade mattered, every extracurricular activity counted, and every academic competition was an opportunity to strengthen her college applications. It wasn't the path she'd originally envisioned for herself. Growing up, Olivia had dreamed of becoming a pilot like her grandmother, Captain Eleanor Wilson, who had served with distinction in the Air Force during Desert Storm. She'd spent countless weekends at the local airfield with her grandmother, learning to read weather patterns, calculate flight paths, and understand aircraft mechanics. Her natural talent was undeniable. She could perform mental calculations that impressed even seasoned pilots, visualize three-dimensional problems with remarkable clarity, and demonstrated a cool-headed approach to complex situations. But everything changed when her older sister, Abigail, enlisted in the Marine Corps at 18, eager to follow in their grandmother's footsteps of military service. 6 months into her first deployment, an IED explosion severely injured Abigail, leaving her with a traumatic brain injury and PTSD that transformed her from a vibrant, confident young woman into someone who struggled with daily tasks and experienced terrifying flashbacks. Olivia watched her parents age a decade in a single year, saw her mother cry herself to sleep night after night, and made a decision that would haunt her for years to come. She abandoned her dream of military aviation and channeled all her energy into academics instead. It was a compromise that let her plan for a secure future without carrying the weapons that might one day make another family suffer like hers had. Now, sitting in this advanced algebra classroom surrounded by peers who questioned her dedication, Olivia wondered if she'd made the right choice. Mrs. Parker entered the classroom, her heels clicking against the linoleum floor with mathematical precision. "Good morning, everyone," she announced, her voice cutting through the casual conversation. "Today, we'll be tackling logarithmic equations and their real-world applications." Olivia opened her immaculately organized notebook and began taking detailed notes, preparing for another day of academic excellence that felt increasingly hollow. "Ms. Wilson," called Mrs. Parker, "perhaps you could walk us through this equation?" She gestured to a particularly complex problem involving multiple logarithmic expressions. Other students shifted uncomfortably, glad they hadn't been selected. Olivia approached the whiteboard confidently. This was her element. Numbers made sense in a way people often didn't. She worked through the problem methodically, explaining each step with clarity that impressed even Mrs. Parker. The solution emerged with elegant precision, revealing patterns that Olivia found beautiful in their mathematical harmony. "Excellent work as always, Ms. Wilson," Mrs. Parker commented as Olivia returned to her seat. "I'd like everyone to note how Ms. Wilson approached this systematically. There's a lesson there about complex problem solving that extends beyond mathematics." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. After class, Tyler approached Olivia as she packed her books. "How do you do that?" he asked, sounding genuinely curious rather than mocking for once. "The way you break down problems. It's like you see something that rest of us don't." Olivia shrugged, uncomfortable with direct praise. "My grandmother taught me to visualize problems in 3 dimensions. She was a pilot, and for her, mathematics wasn't abstract. It was about calculating fuel consumption rates, wind resistance, or optimal approach angles. I just apply the same principles." "That's actually pretty cool," Tyler admitted. "I'm struggling with the logarithmic concepts. Any chance you'd be willing to help me study for the midterm?" The request surprised Olivia. Tyler had never shown interest in academics before, much less in seeking her help. "Sure," she replied cautiously. "The library after school tomorrow?" Tyler nodded, looking relieved, and Olivia felt a small sense of satisfaction. Perhaps her mathematical abilities could serve a purpose beyond merely securing her academic future. As Olivia walked toward her next class, advanced physics, she noticed something unusual through the large windows overlooking the school's front lawn. A sleek black SUV with government plates had pulled up to the curb. 2 men in dark suits emerged, scanning the building with purposeful intensity. Something about their demeanor sent a chill down Olivia's spine. They weren't school officials or regular law enforcement. She hurried to physics class, pushing the odd sight from her mind as she focused on the day's lesson about velocity calculations and projectile motion. Professor Reed was explaining the mathematical models for predicting where an object would land when launched at a specific angle with a given initial velocity. Concepts Olivia had already mastered through her grandmother's practical aviation lessons. "Ms. Wilson," Professor Reed called out, noticing her distracted glance toward the window. "Since you seem to have mental bandwidth to spare, perhaps you could calculate the optimal launch angle to maximize range on Earth, accounting for standard gravity and ignoring air resistance." Without hesitation, Olivia replied, 45 degrees, sir." In the absence of air resistance, a 45-degree angle provides the maximum range for a projectile, as it optimally balances horizontal and vertical components of the initial velocity. "Professor." Reed raised an eyebrow, impressed by her immediate and correct response. "And if we were to account for air resistance?" He pressed. "Then the optimal angle would be slightly less than 45 degrees, depending on the projectile shape and mass. The greater the air resistance, the lower the optimal angle, typically between 30 and 42 degrees for most standard objects," Olivia explained, drawing from knowledge her grandmother had shared about aircraft performance under various atmospheric conditions. Professor Reed nodded approvingly. "Excellent, Ms. Wilson. It seems your understanding extends beyond textbook formulas to practical applications." The exchange reinforced Olivia's reputation as not just a student who memorized equations, but one who genuinely understood the physics behind them. Halfway through the lecture, a knock at the classroom door interrupted Professor Reed's explanation of kinetic energy. The school principal, Dr. Harrington, entered with an unusually serious expression, followed by the 2 men in suits Olivia had noticed earlier. "I apologize for the interruption," Dr. Harrington said formally. "Is Olivia Wilson present?" All eyes turned to Olivia, who felt her heart rate accelerate. Had something happened to Abigail? To her parents? The room seemed to shrink around her as she raised her hand. "Ms. Wilson, please gather your belongings and come with us," Dr. Harrington instructed. Her tone was neutral but carried an undercurrent of tension that Olivia immediately recognized. Something significant was happening. With trembling hands, Olivia packed her notebook and textbooks. The whispers started immediately. What did the nerd do? Is she in trouble? Maybe she cheated on the national math competition. Olivia ignored them, her mind racing through possibilities, none of them good. In the hallway, Dr. Harrington stepped aside as one of the suited men approached. "Ms. Wilson, I'm Special Agent Thomas Reynolds with the Department of Defense. This is my colleague, Agent Carter. We need you to come with us immediately." "Has something happened to my family?" Olivia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Your family is fine, Ms. Wilson," Agent Reynolds assured her. "This concerns a matter of national security that requires your specific expertise. I'm not at liberty to discuss details here, but everything will be explained once we reach a secure location." National security? Her expertise? Olivia's confusion only deepened as she was escorted through the school hallways, past curious onlookers and startled teachers. The principal walked alongside them, her expression a mixture of concern and what appeared to be pride. "Ms. Wilson has been selected to assist with a special government project," Dr. Harrington explained to a questioning teacher they passed. "Her absence will be recorded as an approved educational opportunity." As they approached the main entrance, Dr. Harrington turned to Olivia. "Whatever this is, I'm confident you'll represent Westridge admirably. Your academic record speaks for itself." Olivia nodded mutely, still processing the surreal turn of events. Outside, the black SUV waited, its engine running. But beyond it, something caught Olivia's eye that made her breath catch in her throat. On the school's football field, previously hidden from view from her classroom window, sat a Marine Corps helicopter, specifically AVH-6ON White Hawk, better known as Marine One when used by the President. Its rotors were still, but crew members stood nearby, clearly prepared for immediate departure. That's Marine One," Olivia stammered, her extensive knowledge of aircraft immediately identifying the helicopter. Agent Reynolds nodded. "Yes, it is, and it's waiting for you, Ms. Wilson." The world seemed to tilt beneath Olivia's feet. 18-year-old high school students didn't get extracted from Algebra, class by Marine One. Whatever was happening transcended anything she had imagined for her carefully planned life. "I don't understand," she said, looking between the agents. "I'm just a student. Whatever you need, there must be professionals with actual qualifications who—" "Ms. Wilson," Agent Carter interrupted, speaking for the first time, "we've reviewed your academic records, your standardized test scores, and most importantly, the independent projects you've completed in advanced mathematics and physics. Your work on flight pattern optimization algorithms caught our attention 6 months ago. What you developed as a hobby project for your grandmother's flight simulator has significant applications beyond civilian aviation." Olivia felt a chill run through her body. The flight optimization program had been a personal project, something she developed to help her grandmother plan more efficient routes that reduced fuel consumption. She'd posted the algorithm on an aviation enthusiast forum, seeking feedback from pilots. She never imagined it would attract government attention. "That was just a theoretical exercise," she protested. "The calculations weren't even fully tested in real-world conditions." "Actually, they were," Agent Reynolds said. "Several commercial pilots from that forum implemented your algorithms in simulation environments. The efficiency improvements were substantial enough that it came to the attention of our aerospace division. But that's only part of why we're here today." As they approached the helicopter, a Marine Corps officer stepped forward to meet them. "Ms. Wilson, I'm Colonel James Harrison. Thank you for coming with us. Time is of the essence." The rotors of Marine One began to spin, creating a whirlwind that whipped Olivia's hair across her face. The sound was deafening, yet somehow it awakened something deep inside her, the childhood dreams of flight she had suppressed for years. Despite her confusion and apprehension, a part of her thrilled at the sight of the magnificent aircraft. "Where are we going?" Olivia shouted over the noise as she was escorted toward the helicopter. "Andrews Air Force Base," Colonel Harrison replied. "From there, a military transport will take us to our final destination." The situation requires immediate attention, and your particular skills are critically needed." Olivia hesitated at the helicopter's doorway, suddenly overwhelmed by the magnitude of what was happening. She was stepping away from her carefully constructed life, her perfect attendance record, her meticulously planned study schedule for upcoming exams, the college applications she had been preparing for years. Yet something in Colonel Harrison's tone conveyed an urgency that resonated with her sense of duty, a quality her grandmother had instilled in her long before she'd chosen her academic path. "What about my parents?" she asked, realizing they would worry when she didn't return home from school. "They've been contacted," Agent Carter assured her. "They've given their consent for this emergency consultation, though they don't know the specific details for security reasons." Taking a deep breath, Olivia stepped into Marine One, leaving behind the predictable world of high school mathematics for an uncertainty that both terrified and exhilarated her. As she buckled into her seat, surrounded by military personnel and government agents, she couldn't help but wonder if this was the universe's way of steering her back toward the path she had abandoned after Abigail's injury. The helicopter lifted off, rising above the school where curious students and teachers had gathered at windows to witness the extraordinary scene. Olivia caught a glimpse of Tyler and her physics teacher among the onlookers, their expressions a mixture of confusion and awe. In that moment, she wasn't just the math nerd anymore. She was something else, entirely something even she didn't yet understand. As Marine One banked toward the east, Colonel Harrison handed Olivia a tablet with a security clearance agreement displayed on the screen. "Before we brief you on the situation, I need you to sign this. What you're about to learn is classified at the highest levels." Olivia scanned the document, her analytical mind quickly processing the legal terminology. It was essentially a non-disclosure agreement with severe penalties for any breach of confidentiality. With a slightly trembling finger, she signed her name on the touchscreen. Colonel Harrison nodded approvingly and took the tablet back. "Ms. Wilson, approximately 18 hours ago, NASA lost communication with the International Space Station during a critical orbital adjustment maneuver. Initial diagnostics suggest a computational error in the guidance systems, resulting in a trajectory miscalculation that has placed the station in a slowly degrading orbit." Olivia's eyes widened as the implications became clear. "The ISS is falling?" "Not immediately," Agent Reynolds clarified. "But yes, without intervention, the station will enter Earth's atmosphere within 72 hours. There are currently 6 astronauts aboard, 4 Americans, 1 Japanese, and 1 European." Olivia gripped the leather seat as Marine One soared above the landscape. Her mind raced with calculations, orbital decay rates, gravitational variables, atmospheric drag coefficients. The math was complex but familiar, a language she had spoken fluently since childhood. "The ISS orbits at approximately 420 kilometers above Earth," she said, thinking aloud. "If it's in a degrading orbit, we need to know the exact rate of descent to calculate the window for intervention." Colonel Harrison nodded approvingly. "That's precisely why you're here, Ms. Wilson. NASA's best engineers have been working on the problem since communications dropped, but they're at an impasse. The station's primary computers are malfunctioning, and the backup systems are providing conflicting data." "But I don't understand," Olivia said, genuine confusion in her voice. "NASA has hundreds of brilliant mathematicians and physicists. What could I possibly contribute that they haven't already considered?" Agent Reynolds leaned forward. "Your flight optimization algorithm approached the problem differently from conventional methods. You incorporated variables that most aerospace engineers dismiss as negligible, but in aggregate, they create a more accurate prediction model. We need that kind of innovative thinking right now." The helicopter began its descent toward Andrews Air Force Base, where Olivia could see a C-17 Globemaster III transport aircraft waiting on the tarmac, its massive cargo bay door already open. Marine 1 touched down with precision, and within minutes, Olivia was being escorted across the tarmac toward the waiting transport plane. Inside the C-17, Olivia was surprised to find what looked like a mobile command center. Banks of computers lined the walls, and several people in NASA uniforms worked intensely at various stations. A large central screen displayed a three-dimensional model of the International Space Station, its current orbital path highlighted in red. Ms. Wilson, a tall woman in her 50s, approached, extending her hand. "I'm Dr. Elena Martinez, NASA's Director of Mission Control. Thank you for coming on such short notice." Olivia shook her hand, still feeling overwhelmed by the rapid escalation of events. "I'm still not sure how I can help, Dr. Martinez. Let me show you." Dr. Martinez led her to a workstation where complex orbital calculations scrolled across multiple screens. "We've attempted 3 remote orbital correction burns, all failed. The station's onboard navigation systems are rejecting our commands because they conflict with what the compromised guidance computers are calculating. It's as if the ISS has developed its own opinion about where it should be," added a younger man at a nearby console. "I'm Dr. Jason Chun, by the way, Lead Orbital Dynamics Specialist." "The problem isn't just mathematical," Dr. Martinez continued. "It's interpretive. The station's systems are working with corrupted data, but following valid protocols. We need to speak to the computers in their own language, convince them that our calculations are correct." As the C-17 took off, Olivia was handed a tablet containing all the technical specifications of the ISS guidance systems, the communication protocols, and the logs of the failed correction attempts. She immersed herself in the data, her mind shifting into the focused state that had always set her apart in academic competitions. "These numbers don't make sense," she muttered after 20 minutes of review. "The orbital decay calculation isn't accounting for solar radiation pressure correctly." Dr. Chun looked up sharply. "We factored that in using standard coefficients." "Standard isn't accurate enough for the current solar activity," Olivia replied, pulling up another screen. "There was a minor solar flare 36 hours ago. The increased particle density would alter the station's drag coefficient by approximately 0.87%. That's well within acceptable margins of error," Dr. Chun argued. "Under normal circumstances, yes," Olivia conceded. "But with cumulative calculation errors in the guidance system, even tiny discrepancies could be significant. It's like calculating a flight path from Los Angeles to Tokyo. A fraction of a degree error at the beginning puts you miles off course at the destination." Dr. Martinez watched the exchange with growing interest. "Jason, let's run the numbers." Again with Ms. Wilson's adjustments. For the next 2 hours, Olivia worked alongside NASA's specialists, applying the same principles she'd used in her flight optimization algorithm to the ISS orbital calculations. Her approach wasn't just mathematically rigorous, it was creative, drawing connections between seemingly unrelated variables in ways that traditional aerospace models didn't account for. "Your grandmother taught you well," Colonel Harrison commented. As he observed her work, Olivia looked up surprised. "You know about my grandmother? Captain Eleanor Wilson?" "Absolutely. She was a legend in military aviation circles. Her work on optimized search patterns during Desert Storm saved countless lives. When your algorithm appeared on that aviation forum, several retired Air Force officers recognized the methodology. It bore her signature approach: elegant, comprehensive, unconventional." A wave of emotion washed over Olivia. Her grandmother had never mentioned that her flight techniques had saved lives during war. She had only spoken of the joy of flying, the freedom of the skies, the beauty of mathematical precision translated into three-dimensional movement. "I didn't know," Olivia said softly. "She taught me to see mathematics as practical, not theoretical, to visualize numbers as forces acting in real space." That's exactly what we need right now, Dr. Martinez interjected. Traditional aerospace. Mathematics treats too many variables as constants or negligible factors. Your approach accounts for the dynamic reality of orbital mechanics. The plane began its descent, and through the window, Olivia caught sight of their destination, the sprawling complex of NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. The reality of the situation hit her anew. 6 lives hung in the balance, dependent on calculations that she, an 18-year-old high school student, was now helping to formulate. What if I'm wrong? She whispered to herself, suddenly doubting everything. Colonel Harrison, overhearing her moment of uncertainty, moved to sit beside her. Ms. Wilson, doubt is natural in high-stakes situations. But remember this, you were chosen because your mind works differently from the hundreds of experts already tackling this problem. Sometimes the fresh perspective is exactly what's needed. As the C-17 landed, Olivia steeled herself. The weight of responsibility was enormous, but she refused to let fear paralyze her. She thought of her sister Abigail, who had faced life-threatening danger in service to others. She thought of her grandmother, whose mathematical precision in flight had apparently saved lives. The family legacy of service that she had tried to escape was now calling to her in a way she couldn't ignore. The Johnson Space Center bustled with activity as Olivia was escorted through security checkpoints and into the heart of mission control. The famous room from countless historical space missions was now a hive of focused energy, with dozens of specialists at workstations arranged in concentric semicircles before giant display screens. The central screen showed a live feed from the International Space Station, where 6 astronauts continued their work, apparently unaware of the crisis unfolding around them. "We haven't informed the crew of the full situation," Dr. Martinez explained quietly. "They know we're experiencing communication difficulties and orbital discrepancies, but we've downplayed the severity to prevent panic. They're continuing routine operations while conserving propellant for when we resolve the guidance issue." Olivia was led to a specialized workstation where 3 mathematicians were already running simulations based on her initial suggestions from the flight. Dr. Chun quickly introduced her to the team: Dr. Sarah Williams, theoretical physics; Dr. Miguel Santos, computer systems; and Dr. Rachel Kahn, propulsion engineering. "We've integrated your solar radiation pressure calculations," Dr. Williams began without preamble. "The numbers are closer, but we're still seeing discrepancies in the predicted versus actual orbital degradation." Olivia studied the simulation results, her mind racing. Something still wasn't adding up. "May I see the raw telemetry data from the station? Not the processed numbers. I want to see exactly what's coming from the sensors." Dr. Santos raised an eyebrow but pulled up the requested information. "It's messy. The data streams are partially corrupted." As Olivia examined the raw sensor outputs, a pattern began to emerge, not in the numbers themselves, but in the pattern of corruption. "The errors aren't random," she said suddenly. "Look at the timestamp anomalies. They're appearing at regular intervals, exactly 47.8 seconds apart." Dr. Kahn leaned closer. "You're right. That's not a random corruption pattern. It's almost like—" Olivia paused, mentally reviewing the ISS systems architecture she had studied on the flight. "The guidance computer is receiving valid data, but processing it through an incorrect time dilation algorithm. It's calculating as if the station is moving faster than it actually is, which is why the orbital corrections are failing. The system is firing thrusters at the wrong moments." A hush fell over the immediate area as the NASA specialists exchanged glances. Dr. Martinez stepped forward, eyes intense. "That would explain why our correction burns are being rejected. If the onboard systems believe the station is at a different point in its orbit than it actually is, the safety protocols would prevent execution." "Can we bypass the safety protocols?" Colonel Harrison asked. Dr. Santos shook his head. Not remotely. Those protocols exist precisely to prevent ground control from making catastrophic errors. The station systems have autonomy in these situations by design. Olivia's mind raced ahead to the logical conclusion. Then we need to convince the guidance computer that its time dilation calculations are wrong. We need to speak its language. How? Dr. Martinez asked. By sending it a correction algorithm that accounts for its perception of time, Olivia explained, already typing furiously. Instead of telling it that it's wrong, we acknowledge its version of reality and build our solution within that framework. For the next 4 hours, Olivia worked with the NASA team to develop what she called a perceptual bridge algorithm, a mathematical translation layer that would convert their correct orbital calculations into the time-shifted reference frame that the ISS computers were operating within. It was like learning to communicate with someone who perceived time at a different rate. You didn't try to force them to adapt to your perception. You adapted your message to be understood within theirs. As they worked, Mission Control received word that the astronauts had begun to notice the orbital degradation. Captain Sarah Chun, the ISS commander, had reported unusual vibration patterns during her scheduled exercise period, and environmental sensors were detecting subtle changes in the station's gravitational orientation. We're running out of time, Colonel Harrison observed grimly. How close are we to a solution? Dr. Martinez looked to Olivia, who was still refining equations with Dr. Williams. The algorithm is ready for testing, Olivia replied, not looking up from her work. But we need to run it through simulations to ensure it won't make the situation worse. How long will that take? Harrison pressed. Normally days, Dr. Santos replied. We're compressing it to hours, but there's no shortcut. For validation when lives are at stake. As the simulations ran, Olivia stepped away from her workstation for the first time in hours. Her legs were stiff, her eyes burned from staring at screens, and her mind buzzed with equations and variables. She found herself before the large window overlooking the Space Center grounds, watching as the Texas sunset painted the sky in brilliant orange and purple hues. It's beautiful, isn't it? Came a voice beside her. Olivia turned to find an older man in a NASA uniform adorned with numerous pins and badges. Oh, excuse me, sir. I didn't see you there. The man smiled kindly. Gene Kranz, he introduced himself. Former flight director. Olivia's eyes widened with recognition. Apollo 13, she breathed. You were the lead flight director during the oxygen tank explosion. Among other missions, yes, he nodded. Dr. Martinez mentioned we had a young mathematical prodigy helping with our current situation. Reminds me of Katherine Johnson during the early days of the space program. Olivia shook her head modestly. I'm no Katherine Johnson, sir. I'm just applying principles my grandmother taught me. Sometimes the most valuable contribution comes from outside the established system, Kranz reflected. During Apollo 13, we had to improvise solutions that weren't in any manual or protocol. The astronauts constructed a carbon dioxide scrubber out of spare parts and duct tape. Square pegs and round holes, Olivia murmured, remembering the famous phrase from the Apollo 13 mission. Exactly, Kranz nodded. Your approach to the ISS guidance system treating the error as a perceptual difference rather than a malfunction. That's thinking outside the established parameters. It's what we need right now. Olivia felt a surge of confidence at the legendary flight director's words. Thank you, sir. That means a lot, Ms. Wilson. Dr. Chun's voice called from across the room. The simulations are complete. Returning to the workstation, Olivia found the team reviewing the results with expressions of cautious optimism. The simulations showed a 78% probability of success for their perceptual bridge algorithm, not ideal, but significantly better than previous attempts. It's the best chance we have, Dr. Martinez decided. Let's prepare for transmission. The next hour was a flurry of activity as the team packaged the algorithm for transmission to the ISS. The programming had to be compressed, encrypted, and formatted to pass through the degraded communication channels still available with the station. Olivia worked alongside Dr. Santos, making last-minute adjustments to ensure the code would be compatible with the station's compromised systems. "Transmission ready," Dr. Santos announced finally, awaiting final authorization. All eyes turned to Dr. Martinez, who held the ultimate responsibility for the operation. She studied the screens before her, weighing the risks against the steadily decreasing window for successful intervention. "Olivia," she said quietly, "this is your algorithm. In your assessment, what are the risks if we proceed?" The room fell silent as Olivia considered the question. The weight of 6 lives pressed upon her shoulders, heavier than any academic pressure she had ever experienced. "There are 3 primary risks," she answered honestly. "First, the algorithm might fail to establish communication with the guidance systems, in which case we're no worse off than now. Second, it might partially succeed, but introduce new errors into the guidance calculations, potentially accelerating the orbital decay. Third," she paused, the mathematical certainty of what she was about to say clashing with her emotional reluctance to voice it. "If the time dilation perception is more severe than our measurements indicate, our corrections could trigger an immediate catastrophic thruster fire in the wrong vector." "And what do you recommend?" Dr. Martinez pressed. Olivia took a deep breath, thinking of her grandmother's lessons about making decisions in flight. How sometimes you had to trust your instincts when all the data wasn't perfect. "I recommend we proceed," she said firmly, but with a phased transmission approach. "Send the algorithm in 3 sequential packets, evaluating the system response after each one. If we see any adverse reactions, we can abort before the full implementation." Dr. Martinez nodded, satisfied. "That's our plan then. Prepare for phased transmission." She turned to address the entire mission control team. "Everyone, this is our moment. Focus on your tasks, communicate clearly, and let's bring our astronauts home safely." As the countdown to transmission began, Olivia felt a strange calm settle over her. For the first time since Marine One had landed at her high school, she felt certain she was exactly where she was meant to be. The algorithm she had created, built on principles her grandmother had taught her years ago, was about to be tested in the most critical way imaginable. "Phase 1 transmission, initiating now," announced the communications specialist. On the main screen, the data stream pulsed its way toward the distant space station. Now all they could do was wait and see if Olivia's mathematical bridge could span the gap between their reality and the ISS computer's distorted perception. The entire Mission Control Center held its breath as they waited for confirmation that the first phase of the perceptual bridge algorithm had been received by the International Space Station. The usual buzz of conversation had fallen to an expectant hush, broken only by the steady beep of monitoring equipment and the occasional quiet command from station coordinators. "Signal received," announced the communications specialist finally. "Station acknowledgement confirmed." A tentative cheer rippled through the room, but Olivia knew this was only the first hurdle. "What's the system response?" she asked Dr. Santos, who was monitoring the ISS computer diagnostics. "Initial handshake successful," he reported, eyes fixed on his screen. "The guidance computer is processing the algorithm. No rejection warnings yet." Dr. Martinez moved to stand behind Olivia's chair. "This is promising. Better than our previous attempts. The station's safety protocols haven't immediately flagged the transmission as dangerous." "That's because we're not trying to override its perception," Olivia explained. "We're acknowledging its time dilation experience as valid, then building a correction within that framework." Colonel Harrison, who had been observing quietly from the periphery, stepped forward. It's like speaking to someone in their native language instead of expecting them to understand yours, he observed. Exactly. Olivia nodded. We're not telling the computer it's wrong. We're meeting it where it is. The analogy resonated with Olivia beyond the immediate technical challenge. Wasn't that exactly what her grandmother had done for her? Eleanor Wilson had never forced abstract mathematical concepts on her young granddaughter. Instead, she had translated them into the language of flight teaching algebra through fuel calculations, geometry through flight paths, calculus through the physics of changing altitude and airspeed. Phase 1 integration complete, Dr. Santos announced. System diagnostics show normal processing, no errors detected. Dr. Martinez straightened, a spark of hope evident in her expression. Proceed with Phase 2 transmission. As the second packet of code streamed toward the distant space station, Olivia felt a tap on her shoulder. She turned to find Jean Cran still present, observing the proceedings with keen interest. You know, he said quietly, during Apollo 13, we had a young mathematician who spotted a pattern in the telemetry data that everyone else missed. Like you, she approached the problem from an unconventional angle. Her insight helped us calculate the precise re-entry trajectory. What happened to her? Olivia asked, curious about this unnamed predecessor. She went on to revolutionize our approach to space navigation, Cran smiled. Sometimes a crisis reveals talents that might otherwise remain dormant. Before Olivia could respond, Dr. Santos called out again. Phase 2 received and integrating. ISS guidance systems are recalibrating. The algorithm is establishing synchronization with the onboard computers. The main display showed a visual representation of the algorithm's progress, a web of mathematical relationships slowly aligning the space station's distorted perception with actual reality. It was working exactly as Olivia had hoped, creating a translation layer that allowed the two different mathematical frameworks to communicate effectively. Station Commander Chun is requesting direct communication, reported the Capcom officer suddenly. She's noticed the guidance system activity. Dr. Martinez nodded. Put her through. The large central screen switched to show the face of Commander Sarah Chun, floating in the ISS communication module. Her expression was calm but concerned. Houston, this is Commander Chun. We're observing unusual activity in our navigation computers. Can you advise on the situation? Dr. Martinez stepped forward, activating her microphone. Commander Chun, this is Mission Control. We've identified a time dilation anomaly in your guidance systems that's been causing orbital calculation errors. We're implementing a corrective algorithm now that should resolve the issue. Commander Chun's eyes narrowed slightly. Time dilation anomaly? That sounds more serious than the minor communications glitch we were informed about earlier. Dr. Martinez exchanged glances with Colonel Harrison before responding. Commander, we didn't want to create unnecessary concern before we had a solution. The truth is, your orbit has been degrading due to the guidance system errors. Without correction, you would face a critical situation within approximately 48 hours. The astronaut's expression remained professional, but Olivia could detect the subtle shift in her demeanor as she absorbed the gravity of their situation. I appreciate your candor, Houston. What's our current status? We're implementing a mathematical bridge developed by our team here, Dr. Martinez explained, carefully avoiding mentioning that the breakthrough had come from an 18-year-old high school student. Phase 2 is integrating now. If successful, Phase 3 will initiate automatic orbital correction burns to stabilize your position. Commander Chun nodded. Understood, Houston. The crew will prepare for possible maneuvering. Chun out. As the communication ended, Dr. Santos called out, Phase 2 integration complete. System diagnostics show 94% synchronization between perceived and actual orbital parameters. Excitement rippled through mission control. Olivia felt a surge of validation. Her unconventional approach was working. The perceptual bridge was successfully translating between the ISS computer's distorted time framework and actual reality. "This is remarkable progress," Dr. Williams commented, studying the telemetry data. "The guidance system is self-correcting based on the algorithm's parameters." "Proceed with Phase 3 transmission," Dr. Martinez ordered, her voice steady, but unable to completely mask her optimism. As the final packet of code was transmitted to the space station, Olivia found herself holding her breath. Phase 3 was the most critical. It would initiate the actual orbital correction burns based on the newly synchronized perception framework. "Phase 3 transmission complete," reported the communications officer. Awaiting integration confirmation. The minutes that followed seemed to stretch endlessly. Olivia watched the telemetry displays, mentally tracking the algorithm's progress through the station's complex computer systems. If she had made even a minor error in her calculations, the consequences could be catastrophic. "Integration at 25%, Dr. Santos reported. "Systems nominal. Integration at 50%, he continued a minute later. "Thruster pre-check initiated. Integration at 75%. Guidance recalibration in progress." The tension in mission control was palpable. Engineers and specialists who had worked tirelessly for hours stood motionless at their stations, all eyes fixed on the main displays. Colonel Harrison had moved to stand beside Olivia, his presence somehow reassuring. "Integration complete," Dr. Santos finally announced. "Orbital correction sequence initiating." On the main screen, real-time telemetry showed the ISS thrusters firing in a precisely calculated sequence. Each burst was minute, carefully measured to gradually adjust the station's orbit without creating dangerous structural stress. "Thruster burn proceeding as programmed," reported the propulsion specialist. "Vector correction optimal. Orbital parameters stabilizing," added Dr. Williams, her voice tight with controlled excitement. "Degradation halting, reversing." "We're seeing positive orbital adjustment." A spontaneous cheer erupted across mission control. People were hugging, high-fiving, some wiping away tears of relief. Colonel Harrison placed a hand on Olivia's shoulder, a gesture of silent congratulation. "We did it," Dr. Martinez announced. Officially, her professional composure finally breaking into a wide smile. "The ISS is returning to its proper orbit. Projected stability is well within normal parameters." In that moment of triumph, Olivia felt something shift within herself, a realization that she had found a purpose that transcended her carefully planned academic path. The mathematical principles her grandmother had taught her had just helped save 6 lives and a multi-billion-dollar space station. The knowledge she had thought would only serve her college applications had proven invaluable in a real-world crisis of the highest order. Commander Chun's face reappeared on the main screen. "Houston, thrusters have completed the correction sequence. Our telemetry confirms we're back in stable orbit. Whatever you did down there worked perfectly. The entire crew extends their gratitude." Dr. Martinez stepped forward. "Commander Chun, we're relieved to see the correction successful. Your orbit should remain stable now that the guidance system has been recalibrated. We'll continue monitoring from here, but the immediate danger has passed." "Roger that, Houston," Commander Chun replied, then paused. "If I may ask, who developed the solution? Our crew would like to know who to thank personally when we return to Earth." Dr. Martinez glanced at Olivia, silently asking permission. When Olivia nodded, she turned back to the screen. "Commander, the mathematical bridge that saved the station was developed by Olivia Wilson, an 18-year-old high school student with exceptional mathematical abilities. She was brought in when our conventional approaches failed to resolve the guidance system anomaly." Commander Chun's eyes widened, slightly in surprise. 18? That's remarkable. Please extend the crew's personal thanks to Ms. Wilson. We owe her our lives." As the communication ended, The reality of what had just occurred finally hit Olivia fully. Hours ago, she had been sitting in algebra class, enduring the casual mockery of classmates who saw her only as the academic overachiever. Now she stood in NASA's mission control, having just helped save the lives of 6 astronauts through the application of mathematical principles that most people dismissed as abstract and impractical. The next few hours passed in a blur of debriefings, technical discussions, and media preparation. NASA's public relations team was already crafting a carefully worded press release about the incident, acknowledging the orbital anomaly but emphasizing the successful resolution without causing undue public alarm. Olivia's role would be mentioned but downplayed to protect her privacy. As the immediate crisis response wound down, Colonel Harrison approached Olivia with a satellite phone. "There's someone who wants to speak with you," he said, handing her the device. "Hello?" Olivia said tentatively. "Olivia?" Came a familiar voice that brought immediate tears to her eyes. "It's Grandma." "Grandma," she breathed, emotion constricting her throat. "How did you?" "Colonel Harrison is an old friend," Eleanor Wilson explained. "He called me as soon as they brought you in. I've been kept informed throughout the situation. Livy, my dear, I am so incredibly proud of you." "I just applied what you taught me," Olivia said, wiping away tears. "About seeing mathematics as real forces in three-dimensional space, about translating abstract concepts into practical applications." "You did far more than that," her grandmother replied. "You found your own way to use those principles. You took what I taught you and created something entirely new with it. That's the true mark of a student surpassing their teacher." The conversation continued for several minutes, Eleanor's calm voice grounding Olivia after the intensity of the past several hours. Before they disconnected, her grandmother said one thing more that would stay with Olivia forever. "You know, Livy, after what happened to Abigail, you thought you needed to abandon your dreams of flight to protect your parents from more heartache. But you've just proven that you can soar higher than any of us imagine, without ever leaving the ground. Sometimes our greatest flights aren't physical at all. They're the journeys our minds take when we push beyond the boundaries of conventional thinking." After ending the call, Olivia found herself approached by Gene Kranz once more. The legendary flight director now held a NASA folder in his hands. "Ms. Wilson," he said formally, "in light of your extraordinary contribution today, NASA would like to offer you something." He handed her the folder. Inside, Olivia found official documentation for NASA's Exceptional Student Opportunities Program, a specialized pathway that would provide her with a full scholarship to any university of her choice, followed by guaranteed employment with NASA. Upon graduation, the program would include mentorship from leading scientists, access to NASA facilities for research purposes, and the opportunity to contribute to ongoing missions while completing her education. "This is, I don't know what to say," Olivia stammered, overwhelmed by the opportunity before her. "You don't need to decide immediately," Kranz assured her. "Take some time to discuss it with your family. But know that NASA recognizes exceptional talent when we see it, regardless of age or formal credentials." Dr. Martinez joined them, adding, "The perceptual bridge algorithm you developed has applications far beyond today's emergency. It represents a new approach to human-computer interaction in complex systems that could revolutionize how we manage space operations." As the adrenaline of the crisis response finally began to fade, Olivia found herself in a quiet corner of Mission Control, staring out at the Texas night sky. The stars seemed different, now no longer distant academic concepts, but real places, where human beings ventured, supported by the mathematical framework she understood so intuitively. Dr. Williams found her there, offering a cup of coffee. "You should know," she said quietly, "that what you accomplished today is what most mathematicians hope to achieve in a lifetime. You didn't just solve a problem, you created a new paradigm for approaching it. I still don't fully understand Why my approach worked when so many brilliant NASA scientists were struggling, Olivia admitted. Sometimes innovation comes from outside the established framework, Dr. Williams replied. We all had years of training in conventional aerospace mathematics, which means we all had the same blind spots, the same ingrained assumptions. You approach the problem with fresh eyes and a different foundational understanding. As they spoke, Olivia noticed Colonel Harrison entering the room with a phone in hand, his expression serious. He approached them directly. Ms. Wilson, he said, there's a situation developing back at your high school. Olivia's heart skipped a beat. What kind of situation? News of your involvement with NASA has leaked, he explained. A local reporter connected the dots when Marine One landed at your school this morning. There are television crews outside your home, and your school has been inundated with media inquiries. Your parents are secure, but we need to manage this carefully. The reality of her sudden fame hit Olivia with unexpected force. Her carefully structured life, the anonymity of being just another academic overachiever, had vanished in a single day. Whatever path she chose from this moment forward, nothing would ever be quite the same. What happens now? She asked, suddenly feeling every bit the 18-year-old she was, despite the extraordinary events of the day. Colonel Harrison's expression softened. Now, Ms. Wilson, you get to decide who you want to be. The world just discovered what your grandmother always knew, that you have extraordinary gifts. How you choose to use them is entirely up to you. As she considered his words, Olivia recalled her sister Abigail's sacrifice, her grandmother's legacy, and the unexpected journey that had brought her from algebra class to mission control in a single day. What this experience has taught me, she continued, is that knowledge is never wasted. The mathematical concepts I learned from my grandmother, a former Air Force pilot who taught me to see numbers as forces acting in three-dimensional space, created the foundation for solving a problem that traditional approaches couldn't address. A reporter raised his hand. Ms. Wilson, how does it feel to be responsible for saving 6 astronauts at the age of 18? Olivia considered the question carefully. I wasn't alone in this effort. The entire NASA team worked tirelessly to implement the solution. What I provided was a different perspective, proof that sometimes the most valuable contribution comes from outside the established system. Another journalist called out, will you be continuing your education or accepting a position with NASA? Both, Olivia replied with a smile. NASA has offered me a specialized program that will allow me to complete my education while actively contributing to ongoing research. And I'm thrilled to announce that my sister, Abigail Wilson, a decorated Marine Corps veteran, will also be joining NASA's training division. The questions continued for nearly an hour, ranging from technical inquiries about the algorithm to personal questions about Olivia's background and aspirations. Throughout, she maintained the poise and clarity that had characterized her work during the crisis, occasionally deferring to NASA specialists for technical details beyond her expertise. When the press conference concluded, Olivia found herself surrounded by her family, all talking at once about the opportunities opening before her. But it was a quiet comment from her father that struck deepest. You know, Livy, he said, putting an arm around her shoulders, when Abigail was injured, your mother and I were devastated. We worried so much about both our daughters, Abby's recovery and your decision to change your life plans because of our pain. Today, seeing both of you finding your paths with NASA, I realize we should have had more faith in the strength we raised in you. 3 months later, Olivia stood before her former high school, preparing to address the student body. Since the ISS incident, her life had transformed completely. She now divided her time between specialized college courses and practical research. At Johnson Space Center, where her mathematical approach was being integrated into NASA's standard protocols for managing complex system anomalies, the perceptual bridge algorithm had been refined and expanded. with applications extending beyond orbital mechanics to various human-computer interaction scenarios. Olivia was credited as its primary developer, with several NASA mathematicians as co-authors on the academic papers describing the methodology. Abigail had thrived in her new role, bringing her personal experience with physical rehabilitation to the astronaut training program. The Wilson sisters had become minor celebrities in the space community, their complementary expertise creating a powerful synergy that benefited NASA in unexpected ways. As Olivia entered the school auditorium, she spotted Tyler Jenkins in the front row. After the media frenzy had died down, he'd sent her an email apologizing for years of dismissive treatment and congratulating her on her achievements. His humility had surprised her, and they'd maintained a friendly correspondence since. Principal Harrington introduced her with evident pride, recounting Olivia's extraordinary journey from student to NASA researcher. When Olivia took the podium, she surveyed the faces of her former classmates, many looking at her with newfound respect, others with curiosity, some with the discomfort of those who suddenly find themselves in the presence of someone they once underestimated. 6 months ago, I sat where you're sitting now, Olivia began. I was focused on grades, college applications, and a carefully planned future that felt safe and predictable. I had deliberately turned away from my childhood dreams of flight because they seemed too risky, too painful for my family after my sister's military injury. She described the day Marine One landed on their football field, how she had been extracted from algebra class and thrust into a crisis that would change her life forever. What I learned through that experience wasn't just about orbital mechanics or computer algorithms. It was about the power of bringing your unique perspective to problems that seem insurmountable. It was about having the courage to step into uncertainty when lives depend on your willingness to try. Olivia spoke about the perceptual bridge concept as a metaphor for life, how sometimes the most valuable contribution isn't forcing others to see things your way, but finding a common framework where different perspectives can communicate effectively. Each of you has unique insights that no one else possesses, she told them. Knowledge gained from your particular experiences, your family traditions, your personal struggles. That unique perspective isn't just valuable, it's essential to solving the complex problems our world faces. After her speech, Tyler approached her at the small reception the school had organized. "That was incredible, Olivia," he said sincerely. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said about different perspectives. It's actually helping me in my physics studies, trying to visualize problems the way you described." "I'm glad," Olivia smiled. "My grandmother always said that mathematics isn't just abstract symbols, it's a language for describing real forces in the physical world. Once you see it that way, everything changes." "Your grandmother sounds like an amazing teacher." "She is," Olivia agreed. "And now she's teaching again. NASA brought her on as a consultant for their educational outreach program. She's helping develop curriculum that teaches mathematical principles through practical applications." That evening, Olivia joined her family for dinner at her grandmother's house, a monthly tradition they had established since she and Abigail had moved to Houston for their NASA positions. Eleanor Wilson had transformed her living room into an impromptu classroom with models of the solar system, flight simulators, and mathematical visualization tools scattered across every surface. 6 new students this week, Eleanor announced, proudly as they ate. Young women interested in aerospace mathematics. They found out about the program after hearing about you two. Abigail grinned. The Wilson women inspiring the next generation. Who would have thought? As they cleared the dinner dishes, Olivia's phone buzzed with a notification from NASA. The algorithm she had developed had just been successfully implemented in a Mars rover, solving a communication delay issue that had plagued the mission for months. Her mathematical bridge had now extended beyond Earth orbit to another planet entirely. Showing the message to her grandmother, Olivia felt a profound sense of rightness, as if all the pieces of her life had finally aligned in a configuration that honored both her family legacy and her unique talents. The path that had seemed so clear before Abigail's injury, then so painfully closed afterward, had reopened in an entirely new direction, one that carried her further than she could have imagined. "You know what this means, don't you?" Eleanor sighed, eyes twinkling as she examined the notification. "Your mathematics is now interplanetary. That beats flying any day." Later that night, as Olivia stood on her grandmother's porch gazing up at the stars, she reflected on the extraordinary journey that had begun with Marine One landing on her high school football field. In the 6 months since, she had discovered that sometimes the most meaningful flights aren't physical journeys through air or space, but intellectual voyages that bridge different ways of seeing the world. The space station continued its orbit above her, its trajectory now stable and true. 6 astronauts lived and worked within that remarkable structure, unaware that their safety had been ensured by an 18-year-old girl with a unique perspective on mathematics, a perspective passed down from grandmother to granddaughter, transformed through personal experience and applied at exactly the right moment. Olivia Wilson, once just another high school student, had found her true calling not by following a predetermined path, but by bringing her authentic self to a moment of crisis. In doing so, she had discovered that sometimes our greatest contributions come not from who we think we should be, but from who we truly are. 1 year had passed since the day Marine One landed at Westridge High School. Olivia Wilson's life had transformed in ways she never could have imagined as she stood in NASA's Advanced Theoretical Applications Lab, surrounded by holographic displays of orbital trajectories and mathematical models. Her perceptual bridge algorithm had evolved into an entire framework for solving complex system anomalies across multiple NASA divisions. "The latest simulation results are promising," Dr. Blackwell commented, studying the 3-dimensional visualization hovering between them. "Your approach to the Europa probe communication issue is unconventional, but the numbers support your theory." Olivia nodded, making minor adjustments to the equations flowing through the air. At 19, she had become an integral part of NASA's mathematical research team, splitting her time between academic studies and practical applications of her unique perspective on complex problems. "The communication delay creates a similar perceptual distortion to what we saw with the ISS," she explained. "If we build a predictive model that anticipates the probe's responses rather than waiting for confirmation, we can maintain more consistent contact without transmission interruptions." Dr. Blackwell smiled. "Anticipatory response modeling. It's brilliant and potentially applicable to all our deep space missions." The lab door opened, and Colonel Harrison entered with a tablet in hand. Though no longer directly supervising Olivia's work, he had remained a mentor and advocate as she navigated the transition from high school student to NASA researcher. "Ms. Wilson," he greeted her formally, though his eyes held the warmth of genuine respect. "I have something you'll want to see." He handed her the tablet, which displayed an official communication from the International Space Station, specifically from Commander Sarah Chun, who had remained aboard for an extended mission. The message was brief but impactful. "Wilson, algorithm successfully implemented in autonomous navigation systems. Station can now self-correct orbital discrepancies without Earth confirmation. Exponential efficiency increase in maneuvering capabilities. Entire crew extends deepest gratitude." A wave of emotion washed over Olivia. What had begun as an emergency solution had evolved into a permanent improvement to humanity's outpost in space. Her mathematics wasn't just solving immediate crises, it was becoming part of the fundamental infrastructure of space exploration. "There's more," Colonel Harrison said, swiping to the next screen. The second communication was from NASA's director himself, formally inviting Olivia to attend the upcoming launch of the Artemis Mission Humanity's return to the moon as an honored guest. Her perceptual bridge framework had been incorporated into the mission's navigation systems, representing a significant advancement in lunar orbital calculations. "They've named a module after you," Colonel Harrison added with unusual emotion in his voice. "The Wilson Navigation Framework is now standard protocol for all NASA missions. Your grandmother would be incredibly proud," came a familiar voice from the doorway. Eleanor Wilson stood there, her Air Force dress uniform immaculate, adorned with medals that spoke of a lifetime of service. At 74, she carried herself with the same precision and dignity that had characterized her military career. "Grandma!" Olivia exclaimed, rushing to embrace her. "I didn't know you were coming to Houston today." "Some news should be delivered in person," Eleanor replied mysteriously, exchanging a knowing look with Colonel Harrison. Before Olivia could question further, her phone buzzed with a video call from Abigail. She answered to find her sister's face filling the screen, excitement evident in her expression. "Liv, have you heard the news yet about the selection?" "What selection?" Olivia asked, confused. Abigail's grin widened. "Check your email, right now." With a puzzled glance at her grandmother and Colonel Harrison, who were both watching. With barely suppressed smiles, Olivia opened her email on the nearest display. At the top of her inbox sat a message from NASA's Astronaut Selection Committee, marked urgent. Her hands trembling slightly, Olivia opened the message and began to read aloud. "Ms. Wilson, it is with great pleasure that we inform you of your selection as a candidate for NASA's Specialized Technical Astronaut Program, STAP. Your unprecedented contributions to spaceflight mathematics, combined with your exceptional problem-solving abilities under pressure, have identified you as an ideal candidate for this newly established pathway." Her voice faltered as the implications became clear. NASA wanted her to train as an astronaut, not through the traditional route that required years of military or scientific experience, but through a specialized program designed for exceptional technical specialists whose skills were deemed critical for the new era of space exploration. I don't understand," Olivia stammered. "I'm only 19. I haven't even finished my degree." "The age requirement has been waived in your case," Colonel Harrison explained. "The selection committee reviewed your performance during the ISS crisis and subsequent research contributions. They believe your mathematical intuition would be invaluable on actual space missions, particularly as we move toward Mars exploration." Eleanor stepped forward, placing her hands on Olivia's shoulders. "You once told me you abandoned your dreams of flight because you feared causing your parents more pain after what happened to Abigail. But some paths find us even when we try to avoid them." Olivia looked back at the screen where Abigail was still watching. "Abby, what do you think about this?" "I think it's about damn time," Abigail replied without hesitation. "You've been solving space problems from the ground for a year. Imagine what you could do actually being up there." "Mom and Dad have already been consulted," Eleanor interjected gently. "They're nervous, of course, but immensely proud." "Your father said something quite profound, actually. He said, 'We can't protect our children from their destiny, only prepare them to meet it with courage.'" The words resonated deeply with Olivia. From the moment Marine One had landed at her high school, she had been on a trajectory as precisely calculated as any orbital insertion, a path that had now brought her to the threshold of her childhood dream, transformed and expanded beyond anything she could have imagined. "The training program begins in 3 months, Colonel Harrison added. "Should you accept, you'll complete your academic requirements concurrently with specialized coursework tailored to the technical demands of the position." Olivia turned back to the holographic display of the Europa probe trajectory, her most recent mathematical challenge. The elegant equations floating in the air represented exactly what made her unique, the ability to see patterns and connections that others missed. to build bridges between different ways of understanding complex systems. "I need some time to think about it," she said finally. Dr. Blackwell nodded understandingly. "Of course. This is a significant decision." As the others left her alone with her thoughts, Olivia found herself drawn to the large observation window. That offered a view of the Johnson Space Center grounds. In the distance, astronaut candidates were completing a training exercise, their movements precise and coordinated. Her phone buzzed with a text message from Tyler Jenkins, now a physics major at MIT, with whom she had maintained a friendship since her return to Westridge High for her speaking engagement. "Just saw the news about the astronaut selection. They'd be crazy not to choose you. The girl who saved the space station from algebra class deserves to see it firsthand." The message made her smile. Tyler had come a long way from the boy who had mockingly called her math nerd just a year ago. His own academic path had been inspired in part by watching her apply theoretical knowledge to real-world problems. That evening, Olivia visited the rehabilitation center where her sister had once undergone intensive therapy after her injury. Abigail had organized a special event there, a workshop for injured veterans interested in STEM careers, particularly in space-related fields. Though Abigail could have held the session at NASA's more impressive facilities, she had deliberately chosen this location to demonstrate that recovery spaces could also be launchpads for new dreams. Olivia watched from the back of the room as Abigail guided the participants through a simplified version of the perceptual bridge concept, teaching them to view mathematical problems as physical realities rather than abstract symbols. "My sister revolutionized orbital calculations by seeing mathematics differently," Abigail was saying. "She taught NASA that sometimes the most valuable perspective comes from outside the traditional framework. Your experiences, including your injuries, give you unique insights that others might not have. That's not a limitation, it's an advantage." One young veteran raised his hand. "But the physical requirements for astronauts are changing," Abigail finished for him. "NASA is finally recognizing that diversity of experience and perspective enhances mission success. My sister may become one of the first astronauts selected specifically for her mathematical abilities rather than physical prowess or military experience." After the session, as they wheeled through the center's garden, Abigail asked the question Olivia had been contemplating all day. "So, are you going to accept the astronaut program?" Olivia sighed. "I'm still not sure. It's everything I dreamed about as a kid, but you're worried about Mom and Dad," Abigail finished. "About putting them through the stress of having another daughter in danger." "Yes," Olivia admitted. "And I wonder if I'm more valuable here, developing the mathematical frameworks that make missions safer. Is it selfish to want to go to space myself when I could potentially help more people by staying on the ground?" Abigail stopped her wheelchair, turning to face her sister directly. "Livy, listen to me. For years after my injury, I tortured myself with what-ifs. What if I hadn't enlisted? What if I'd chosen a different path? It nearly destroyed me until I realized something important." "What's that?" "That purpose isn't just about maximizing utility. It's about alignment, finding where you're unique. Abilities meet the world's needs in a way that makes you fully alive." Abigail's eyes were intense with conviction. "I've watched you this past year. You're brilliant at the mathematics, but when you're solving problems that directly impact missions in progress, when there are lives on the line and seconds matter, that's when you're truly extraordinary." Olivia considered her sister's words carefully. "You think I should accept?" "I think you should stop making decisions based on fear of what might happen," Abigail replied. "That's what you told me when I was hesitating about the NASA training. Position, remember? Now I'm returning the advice." That night, Olivia sat on the roof of her apartment building, gazing up at the stars. She thought about the path that had brought her here, from her grandmother's early lessons in practical mathematics to the day Marine One landed at her school, from the crisis at Mission Control to her current position at the forefront of space. Navigation theory. Her phone buzzed with a message from her mother. "Dad and I were going through old photos and found this. Thought you might like to see it." The attached image showed 7-year-old Olivia in the cockpit of a small plane, her grandmother pointing out instruments while Olivia gazed at them with absolute concentration. The pure joy on her young face was unmistakable, the expression of someone exactly where they belonged. The next morning, Olivia arrived at Dr. Blackwell's office with her decision. The director looked up expectantly as she entered. "I've decided to accept the astronaut program," Olivia announced, her voice steady with conviction. "But I have one condition." Dr. Blackwell raised an eyebrow. "Which is, I want to continue developing the mathematical framework while I train. And specifically, I want to create a version that can be taught to students not just college level, but high school and even younger. If my perspective is valuable to NASA, then we should be cultivating similar perspectives in the next generation." A slow smile spread across Dr. Blackwell's face. "As it happens, the Education Division has been hoping you would propose something along those lines. Your grandmother's teaching methods, combined with your practical applications, represent a potentially revolutionary approach to STEM education." 6 months later, Olivia stood before a very different audience than the high school students she had addressed after the ISS crisis. The auditorium at Space Center Houston was filled with educators from across the country, gathered for the unveiling of the Wilson Mathematical Framework, an educational program designed to teach complex mathematical concepts through practical three-dimensional applications. "Mathematics isn't just abstract symbols on a page," Olivia explained, as holographic models appeared above the stage. "It's the language that describes real forces acting in physical space. When students understand that, when they can visualize equations as tangible realities, their relationship with mathematics transforms completely." In the front row sat her family, her parents beaming with pride, Abigail recording the presentation for NASA's educational archives, and grandmother Eleanor watching with the satisfaction of a teacher whose student had become a master in her own right. Beside them sat Commander Sarah Chen, recently returned from the ISS, and the NASA director himself. The presence of such high-ranking officials underscored the significance NASA placed on this educational initiative, not just as public outreach, but as an investment in future problem solvers who might one day save missions through unconventional thinking. After the presentation, as educators crowded around to ask questions and request program materials, Eleanor pulled Olivia aside for a private moment. "Your astronaut training begins next week," she said. "Are you nervous?" Olivia considered the question honestly. "Not about the training itself. But I do wonder sometimes if I'm trying to fulfill too many roles at once: researcher, educator, and now astronaut candidate." Eleanor's expression grew thoughtful. "When I was flying combat missions, I used to worry that I was neglecting my role as a mother to your father. Years later, he told me something I'll never forget. He said watching me pursue excellence in my calling gave him permission to do the same in his." She placed a hand on Olivia's shoulder. "You're not dividing yourself by embracing these different aspects of your purpose. You're creating a unified whole greater than the sum of its parts." The wisdom resonated deeply with Olivia, who had been struggling to reconcile the multiple paths now opening before her. Perhaps they weren't separate roads at all, but converging routes to the same destination, a life of meaningful contribution through her unique perspective. 1 month into her astronaut training, Olivia experienced the most profound validation of her decision. During a simulated crisis in the Neutral Buoyancy Laboratory, NASA's enormous underwater facility for practicing spacewalks, her team encountered a situation remarkably similar to the ISS guidance system failure. With communications deliberately cut by the training supervisors, They had to solve the problem using only the resources and knowledge immediately available. While the other candidates approached the problem through standard protocols, Olivia immediately recognized the pattern underlying the simulation. Drawing on both her mathematical framework and her practical training, she developed an improvised solution that restored systems functionality in 1/3 the expected time. Afterward, the training director pulled her aside. "Wilson, that kind of innovative problem-solving is exactly why you're here. Traditional astronaut candidates excel at executing established procedures. You excel at creating new ones when the established procedures fail." 2 years later, at 22, Olivia stood before the full-length mirror in her quarters at Kennedy Space Center, adjusting the NASA insignia on her flight suit. In less than 24 hours, she would board the Artemis return mission to the Lunar Gateway Station, not as a passenger, but as the mission's navigation specialist. Her phone chimed with incoming video calls from her family, all eager to wish her well before communications lockdown began for final launch preparations. "How are you feeling, honey?" her mother asked, eyes bright with a mixture of pride and carefully controlled worry. "Focused," Olivia replied honestly. "The math is solid, the team is prepared, and the mission objectives are clear." Her father appeared next to her mother on the screen. "We're so proud of you, Livy. Your grandmother is here too. She's getting suited up for the family viewing area." The image shifted to show Eleanor in her Air Force dress uniform, now adorned with an honorary NASA pin marking her contribution to the Wilson mathematical framework that had revolutionized astronaut training. "Remember what I taught you about cross winds during landing," Eleanor said with a wink. "The same principles apply during lunar descent, just without the atmosphere." Abigail's face appeared next, from her office at NASA's Training Division, where she had risen to become the Deputy Director of Astronaut Preparation. "The simulation team sends their regards. You outperformed every scenario they threw at you. Even the impossible ones they designed specifically to make me fail?" Olivia asked with a smile. "Especially those," Abigail laughed. "They've started calling them Wilson scenarios in your honor." After the call ended, Olivia took a moment to reflect on the extraordinary journey that had brought her here, from a high school algebra class to the threshold of space travel. The day Marine One landed on the football field hadn't just changed her life. It had revealed a purpose that had been waiting for her all along. On the small desk in her quarters sat a framed photograph of her 18-year-old self in mission control, surrounded by NASA's top scientists during the ISS crisis. Beside it stood a more recent image of Olivia and 20 high school students from across the country who had been selected for the first Wilson Mathematics Initiative, a program she had founded to identify and nurture unconventional mathematical thinkers. Among them stood Tyler Jenkins, now a teaching assistant for the program while completing his physics doctorate. His journey from mocking the math nerd to championing innovative STEM education represented exactly the transformation Olivia hoped to inspire in others. As the final hours before launch ticked away, Olivia received one last message, not from family or colleagues, but from Commander Chun, who had become a mentor since their shared experience during the ISS crisis. "When I was trapped on a failing space station, it was the fresh perspective of an 18-year-old girl that saved us. Remember that when you face challenges on this mission, the solution often comes not from what we know, but from how we see what we know." Safe travels, Navigation Specialist Wilson. Ad Astra per Mathematica. To the stars through mathematics. The Latin phrase captured perfectly what Olivia had discovered. Since that fateful day when Marine One landed at her school, that mathematics wasn't just a subject to be studied, but a vehicle for exploration, a bridge between different realities, and sometimes, when the moment demanded it, a means of salvation. As she stepped onto the launch platform the next morning, Olivia gazed up at the massive rocket that would carry her beyond Earth's atmosphere. The 18-year-old algebra student was now a NASA astronaut, embarking on humanity's return to the moon. But more importantly, she was carrying with her a way of seeing the universe that had already changed space exploration and would continue to evolve as she encountered new challenges beyond Earth's orbit. The journey that had begun in a high school classroom had no fixed destination. Like the mathematical principles her grandmother had taught her, it was an ongoing exploration of possibilities, each solution creating the foundation for new questions, each achievement opening doors to greater challenges. And as the countdown reached 0 and the engines ignited beneath her, Olivia Wilson, once just an 18-year-old girl in algebra class, soared beyond the boundaries of Earth, carrying with her the most powerful tool humans had ever developed. The ability to see patterns where others saw only chaos, to build bridges where others saw only gaps, and to find solutions where others saw only problems. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.